I'm Natalie Clarkson. I'm 32 years old, live in Portland, Oregon, and I work as a systems analyst for a cybersecurity firm. I'm also, apparently, too, obsessed with tech to understand real emotions. A direct quote from my sister. But if you'd asked me before this past Christmas, I would have told you that Rachel and I were close. That we shared a bond shaped by childhood bunk beds, whispered secrets after lights out, and our mutual love of peppermint hot chocolate. That illusion shattered on Christmas morning when she kicked me out of the family house while I was still holding a tray of cinnamon rolls. Her exact words? "You ruin every moment with your gadgets, Natalie." We took a vote. "You're not welcome here today." I hadn't even powered on my laptop. But that wasn't even the most surreal part. That came 20 minutes later, when our Grandma May, 87, half-blind, and constantly forgetting whether she's texting or Googling, looked me in the eye and said, "Not everyone can handle tech, dear. That's why they fear it." I know. I couldn't believe it either. Let me tell you how we got here. Drop a comment below if you've ever been blindsided by family you thought had your back. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more stories of how I finally stopped apologizing for who I am. Growing up, Rachel was always the golden child. 2 years younger, with a smile like a toothpaste commercial and the kind of easy charm that made teachers bend rules and strangers hand her lollipops. Meanwhile, I was the girl with her head in a book, or later, behind a laptop screen. Our parents didn't play favorites outright, but it was clear who drew the spotlight. Rachel was praised for her social skills, her musical talents, her ability to light up a room. I was praised for fixing the Wi-Fi. In high school, Rachel became prom queen. I became the unofficial tech support for every teacher over 40. And by the time I landed a full scholarship to a top engineering program while she bounced through 3 different majors, nobody seemed all that surprised. Despite the difference, I never felt bitter. Not really. I figured everyone brought something different to the table. I paid my way through college doing freelance web development while Rachel moved back home after graduation, waiting for a marketing job that never quite panned out. When I got my first apartment, I made sure to include her in everything, inviting her over for dinner, helping her build a LinkedIn profile, even editing her resume at 2 a.m. before interviews she rarely prepared for. Every Christmas, I came home with gifts that were both thoughtful and high-tech. One year, I built Mom a smart mirror that showed her the weather and calendar each morning. Another year, I programmed an automated recipe assistant for Dad. I bought Rachel an iPad with custom illustrations of our childhood memories on the case. I never got thank you notes, but I didn't expect them. I just wanted to feel useful. And then last Thanksgiving, things started to shift. Rachel had finally landed a job as a social media coordinator for a local boutique, and suddenly, her tone changed. She complained I was always correcting people, that I talked down to anyone who didn't understand tech. She even snapped when I gently reminded her that hashtags don't need punctuation. "I'm trying to relate to real humans, Natalie. Maybe you should try it sometime." It stung more than I let on, but I brushed it off. Holidays can be stressful. People lash out. Christmas rolled around, and I made the same offer I always do. I'd host Christmas Eve dinner at my place, then head to our parents' house for Christmas morning. Rachel said no. The family wanted it all under one roof this year. Fine. I baked, I wrapped gifts, even offered to set up a digital photo slideshow of all our old family holidays to play in the background. "No one needs you to turn Christmas into a TED Talk," she replied in the family group chat. My mom replied with a thumbs-up emoji. I tried not to read into it. Still, I drove out early Christmas morning with cinnamon rolls, gifts, and that same hopeful optimism I brought every year. Snow was falling lightly. The roads were quiet. My car stereo played the same indie Christmas playlist I'd been curating since 2015. When I arrived, Rachel met me at the front porch with her arms crossed. "Oh, good," she said flatly. "You're early." "Traffic was light," I said, holding up the tray. "Still warm." She stared at the rolls like I'd brought a raccoon. "Can we talk before you come in?" I shifted, suddenly aware of how cold it was. Sure." She led me to the side of the porch, and then said it without ceremony. "We voted. Me, Mom, Dad. Even Uncle Pete. We think it's better if you leave. Today. I blinked. Wait, what? You ruin every moment with your gadgets. You're always talking about encryption or data privacy, or some AI article nobody cares about. You're not present, Natalie. My mouth fell open. I didn't even bring my laptop. You brought something, she said, gesturing to my phone, which was still in my coat pocket. You always bring something. We want a normal Christmas. Without your smart devices and your facts and your need to fix everything. I was too stunned to reply. Just go, okay? She added, as if this were a breakup and I hadn't just driven 90 minutes with gifts and food. The door opened. Grandma May stepped out, bundled in her faux fur coat and holding her ancient Android phone. Is it snowing harder, or is that just my cataracts? She asked cheerfully. Then she saw my face. Natalie, she said, squinting. You leaving already? She has other plans, Rachel said quickly. Right, Nat? I was still frozen. Grandma walked over, took my hand, ice cold from the tray I was still clutching, and looked me up and down. Someone said something stupid, didn't they? Grandma, Rachel hissed. May ignored her. Natalie, come sit with me. I've got a fireplace app on my phone that crackles real nice. You know how to cast it to the TV. I hesitated, then nodded. Rachel stepped forward. No, Grandma, she was just… I heard what you said. Grandma cut in. Her voice had steel under the softness. And let me tell you something. Not everyone can handle tech. That's why they fear it. Rachel stared. What? She scares you because she sees things you don't, does things you can't. That makes you uncomfortable. So you blame her. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'd never heard Grandma speak like that. Ever. She turned to me. Come sit down. Let's cast that fireplace. You brought cinnamon rolls? I nodded again. Even better. We'll have our own Christmas. And just like that, the tide turned. Grandma May's living room hadn't changed much since the late 90s. Faded rose-patterned furniture, a wooden cabinet that housed both her vintage tea set and an ancient DVD collection, and a crocheted doily on every flat surface. But the TV was new. That was my doing. I'd bought her a smart TV last spring after she called me crying because she couldn't figure out how to get her VHS player to work anymore. We'd spent 3 afternoons learning the remote, and by the end of it, she was binging Grace and Frankie and voice-searching recipes like a champ. I cast the fireplace app to her screen while she arranged the cinnamon rolls on her silver platter, the one with the scalloped edges she only brought out on occasions. Apparently being kicked out of your childhood home qualified. We sat on the couch together and, for a few minutes, just watched the digital flames dance across the screen, the soft crackling sound filling the silence. Grandma broke it first. I always liked that you brought things to fix, you know. You'd come in with a backpack of wires and little tools and gadgets. Reminded me of your grandfather. I smiled faintly. Grandpa had passed when I was 15, but I still remembered how he used to dismantle old radios on the kitchen table just for fun. He was quiet too, Grandma added. Didn't mean he wasn't listening. I exhaled slowly. The adrenaline from the confrontation outside was beginning to fade, leaving behind a hollow ache in my chest. I don't understand what I did, Grandma. I didn't even say anything. I was just there. That's all it takes sometimes, baby. People don't like what they don't understand. Your sister, God love her, she's always needed to be the sun in the room. And you? You bring the kind of light she can't compete with. Techie light. I asked dryly. Grandma chuckled. Truth light. I rested my head on her shoulder, the way I hadn't done since I was a kid. She patted my hand. You know what your real crime is, she said. You don't need their approval. You stop chasing it. That's threatening. I stared at the fake flames, her words sinking in slowly. Rachel's life has always revolved around attention, I murmured. Instagram followers, perfect parties, who gets mentioned in the family newsletter. Me? I just wanted to build things. And you did, Grandma said. Build things and fix things. Sometimes people break what they can't control, Natalie. An hour passed. Grandma insisted I stay for brunch. We dug through her pantry and came up with enough for scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit salad with expired whipped cream. She insisted it tasted aged like cheese. I passed on that. Then, around noon, her phone buzzed. "Your mother," she said, squinting. "She wants to know if I'm coming over." "Are you?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not anymore. I think I'll stay here with you. You've got better cinnamon rolls." Something about that made my throat tighten. I busied myself cleaning dishes while she dictated a text for me to send back. "Not today." Natalie brought brunch. "The fireplace is crackling, and the company's just right. Tell Rachel I said not every system glitch is the tech's fault." I hit send without comment. We spent the afternoon watching holiday movies, and every so often, Grandma would turn to me with some completely unprompted observation like, "You should make one of those talking robots that reminds me to feed my plants," or "Could you teach my mahjong friends how to back up their phones?" By dusk, I had half a dozen ideas jotted into my notes app, most of them feasible. She asked questions, too. Real ones. Like why I got into cybersecurity in the first place. Why I didn't date more often. What I was proudest of in the last year. No one had asked me that in maybe ever. I told her about the security protocol I designed for a nonprofit combating online harassment. How it had already prevented 2 data breaches. Her eyes lit up. "That's what I mean about Truth Light," she said. "You build little fortresses so people can feel safe. That's holy work, Natalie. Holy work. Not something anyone in my family had ever said about what I did." Around 6 p.m., I stood up to leave. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, wrapping my scarf around my neck. "For everything." She walked me to the door, leaning heavily on her cane. "You always have a place here," she said. "Don't let anyone make you feel like a virus in your own family." I hugged her tight. "You sure you'll be okay tonight?" "I've got my fireplace, a heated blanket, and season 4 of Bridgerton queued up. I'll be fine." I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts. Just the snow-covered trees whipping past my headlights and the occasional gust of wind. My hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. The anger had burned off. Now came the confusion, the hurt, the wondering. How long had they felt this way about me? And why hadn't I noticed? By the time I reached my apartment, my phone had 8 unread messages. "Mom, we didn't mean it to come out like that." "Rachel, Grandma didn't need to make a scene. You can be so dramatic." "Dad, maybe we should talk. I didn't want to hurt you." "Uncle Pete, look, emotions were high. You know how your sister is." Each one danced around an apology without ever stepping into the light of accountability. Not one of them said the words I needed. I was wrong. I left them all unread. Instead, I microwaved leftover Thai food and pulled out my laptop. I opened a blank document and titled it, "The Firewall, Personal Boundaries and Family Systems." And I wrote. I didn't know then it would become an article I'd publish anonymously on Medium, that it would go semi-viral, that I'd get emails from strangers saying it helped them understand their own trauma. I just knew I had to get the words out, to codify the boundary I was finally building. The next morning, Grandma called. "I've been thinking," she said without preamble, "maybe it's time I learned how to build one of those websites. Something simple. For my mahjong group. Think you could show me?" I smiled. "Absolutely." "You know," she added thoughtfully, "back in my day, women who knew too much were called witches. Now they just call them difficult, or cold, or not present enough. Doesn't mean you're the problem. Just means you make them nervous." That was Grandma May, 87 years old, half-blind, and seeing things clearer than anyone else. The first week after Christmas was quiet. I didn't call, and no one called me, not even to ask about Grandma, whose act of defiance had apparently caused more disruption than my supposed obsession with tech ever did. According to a vague Facebook post from my aunt, the Christmas incident had left everyone emotionally drained. I scrolled past it without comment. Grandma and I FaceTimed the next morning, her phone propped precariously against a coffee mug. "I figured out how to make my screen stop going dark while I'm slicing apples," she announced proudly. "Turns out the setting is called Screen Timeout, not screen tantrum. She was holding up surprisingly well. You know, I haven't had this much attention since I slipped in the produce aisle at Safeway and landed in a shopping cart, she joked. Maybe I should get kicked out of family holidays more often. That call turned into a habit. Every morning, 10 sharp. We talk about her Mahjong website. She'd picked a pink background and named it Tile Titans, how to organize her Google Drive, and once, an impromptu lecture I gave on phishing scams. She started calling it Tech Church. Meanwhile, I was decompressing. For the first time in years, I had no events to prep for, no family group chats buzzing about who was bringing what casserole, no passive-aggressive remarks about real jobs or emotional intelligence landing like darts at every family dinner. It felt peaceful. On New Year's Day, I finally opened Mom's message thread. She'd sent another text. Mom, it's been a weird week. Rachel says you're still mad. Can we talk sometime? I didn't reply right away. I let it sit. Because I wasn't just mad. I was gutted. And I was tired, so deeply tired, of trying to make people who barely saw me feel comfortable with the version of me that was finally, unapologetically whole. But then I thought of Grandma's voice. Not everyone can handle tech, dear. So I wrote back. Me. I'm not mad. I'm sad. And I'm setting boundaries. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. A few hours later, she heart-reacted the message. Progress? Maybe. Or maybe just digital guilt. Rachel didn't reach out. I didn't expect her to. She'd always been allergic to accountability. When we were teenagers, she crashed my bike into a hedge and told our parents I'd left it parked weird. When I found out, she burst into tears and claimed I was always so mean to her. That's how it went. My evidence versus her feelings. Guess who won? So, I wasn't surprised she didn't check in. But I was surprised when Uncle Pete did. He called one evening while I was elbow-deep in code for a project I'd promised a nonprofit, some database redesign they desperately needed for their end-of-year audit. Hey, kiddo, he said, his voice softer than usual. Just wanted to say, I saw the article you wrote. My heart skipped. You knew it was me? I asked. Course I did. Who else uses emotional rootkit as a metaphor? I smiled despite myself. You wrote the hell out of that piece, Natalie, he said. Wish I'd spoken up more that day. You didn't speak at all. I know. And I regret that. There was a pause. I think you scared them, he added. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you finally stopped giving. And once people are used to feeding off you, they panic when you close the buffet. That's one way to put it. He sighed. I just want you to know, not everyone voted yes. I didn't. I didn't vote no either. And that was my failure. It meant more than I thought it would. I thanked him, and he offered to drop off some cables and old hard drives he'd been meaning to get rid of. For your next project, he said. The next week, I got a text from my cousin Elise. She was Rachel's younger sister by 6 years, the only one in the family who had ever asked me to show her how to code. When she was 12, I gave her a Raspberry Pi starter kit for her birthday. She'd built a weather station with it. Elise, I saw what happened. I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve that. Grandma's a badass. I agreed. She was. January turned into February. The family group chat stayed silent. Then one Thursday night, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost declined it, but something nudged me to answer. Hello. Hi. It's Greg, Rachel's husband. Oh, great. I hope this isn't weird, he said. I wanted to apologize. I raised an eyebrow. For what? For not saying anything that day. For standing behind her like I was carved from salt. I knew it was wrong, Natalie. I knew it, and I still said nothing. His voice cracked. She told me to keep quiet. That it would look better if it came from her. But then she kicked you out, and you just left without a word, and I've been thinking about it ever since. I was quiet. She doesn't understand what you do, he added. She doesn't understand who you are. But I do. And I'm sorry. There it was again. Those small, unexpected sparks of accountability I'd never asked for, but desperately needed. Thank you, I said softly. He cleared his throat. Also, selfishly, Would you mind helping me with some two-factor authentication stuff on my work account? I think I locked myself out. I laughed. Send me the details. By March, a shift had taken root. Mom invited me to lunch, just the two of us. She even picked a cafe with an outlet at every table, so you can bring your laptop if you want. I didn't, but the gesture mattered. We talked. Really talked. She admitted she'd gone along with Rachel's vote out of fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of disrupting the holiday, fear of me walking away for good. She told me she was proud of what I'd done, even if it embarrassed her at first. I didn't understand how much you were carrying, she said. And I should have stood up for you. I told her it hurt, that I didn't feel safe around them, that Rachel had crossed a line that couldn't be unseen. I'm not asking you to forgive everything, she said, but I'm asking for a chance to rebuild. I nodded. Slowly. That Sunday, I visited Grandma again. She was wearing a hoodie that read 404, Family Not Found, a gift from Elise. I wore it to church, she announced proudly. Pastor Chuck asked if it was a new youth ministry. We sat on her porch in the early spring breeze, sipping tea and watching the sun dip below the trees. You know, she said, there are lots of kinds of smart. But you've got the rarest kind. What's that? Digital backbone with a human heart. I smiled. Is that your new gamer tag? She laughed so hard she choked on her tea. April brought tulips to Grandma's garden and an unexpected email to my inbox. Subject: Family meeting request, Rachel. It wasn't long. Just 5 sentences. Natalie, I've been thinking about everything. I'd like to talk face to face. No drama. Just honesty. Let me know if you're willing. It was the first time since Christmas she'd reached out directly. I stared at it for a long time, my cursor hovering over the reply button. There was no apology, no ownership, but there was an opening. Small, unsteady, but real. That night, I called Grandma. She wants to talk? She asked, not hiding her skepticism. What does she want? An iPad to stream her excuses? I don't know, I said. But I think I want to hear her. Grandma was quiet for a moment. All right then, just don't go in there without your armor, baby. What's my armor? She didn't miss a beat. Boundaries and receipts. So we met. Neutral territory. A quiet park near the river. She wore a soft beige sweater and sunglasses too big for her face. I showed up in a hoodie and jeans, no makeup, no armor except for Grandma's words in my head. Rachel stood when I approached. Hey, she said. Hey. We sat on opposite sides of a picnic bench, the spring wind moving between us, like a mediator. Before anything else, she said, I'm sorry. I blinked. I was cruel. I was insecure. And I lashed out at you, because I didn't like what your presence reminded me of. I stayed silent, unsure if more was coming. You've always been ahead of me, she said. Smarter. Quieter. Focused. And I always hated how that made me feel inadequate, like the only thing I had going for me was charm. And when that stopped working on you, I didn't know how to relate to you anymore. I exhaled. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something close to relief. She went on. I wanted the holidays to feel like the ones in the movies, you know? Candles and laughter, and no one talking about VPNs or AI ethics. I smiled a little at that. That's just who I am. I know. And I made that into a crime. I'm sorry for that too. This time, the apology felt heavier. Tua. She pulled something from her purse. A wrapped box. I know it's months late, but I saw this and thought of you. I opened it slowly. Inside was a sleek wooden plaque engraved with the words, Firewall Builder, System Restorer, Truth Teller. I stared at it. I had it made, she said nervously. I figured you probably never felt seen. I ran my fingers over the engraving. Thank you. We talked for hours. About growing up. About the gaps in our understanding of each other. About how being two different kinds of women in the same house had made us rivals when we should have been allies. She didn't excuse what she did. And I didn't pretend it hadn't hurt. But we started something that day, not a full repair but a mutual decision to try. As spring turned to summer, I started seeing more of the family again under my terms. I hosted a tech and tacos night at my place, open Wi-Fi education with gourmet nachos. Grandma brought her mahjong group. Uncle Pete brought two dusty routers from 2006. Even Dad showed up, sheepish but present, asking how to recover deleted texts, asking for a friend, he claimed. Mom apologized again, privately, this time with tears. I let my fear of conflict become a habit, she admitted. You deserved better from me. I deserve better from everyone, I replied. But thank you. Rachel began making real changes too. She attended a few therapy sessions, started a blog called The Social Detox about online vulnerability and self-worth. She even helped Grandma finish her mahjong site, figuring out a catchy tagline, "Where the tiles never lie." One evening in July, we all gathered at Grandma's house. No fancy decorations, no assigned seating. Just potluck dishes, mismatched plates, and a shared commitment to do things differently. Rachel raised a glass of lemonade and said, to Natalie, who reminded us that boundaries aren't betrayals. They're blueprints. That night, as the sun dipped behind Grandma's hydrangeas, I stood on the porch alone, watching the fireflies blink like signals in a quiet sky. My phone buzzed. A comment notification on my Medium article. I read your piece 3 times. My sister cut me out for being too intense about tech and privacy. You made me feel seen. Thank you. I replied. You're not too intense. They're just not used to people with clarity. That's the thing about tech people. We see patterns. We troubleshoot. And when something doesn't work, we iterate. We don't just reboot, we rewrite the code. And that's what I did with my family. It didn't look like the old code. It wasn't about unconditional tolerance or obligatory holidays.
It was about respect, clarity,
accountability. It was about teaching them that presence isn't about volume. It's about value. A few weeks later, Grandma called me, breathless with excitement. I finally figured out my gamer tag, she announced. Oh yeah, Firewall Fairy 92. What do you think? I grinned. Perfect. She chuckled. You know, for a long time I thought being old meant I'd stop learning. But you proved me wrong. You taught me that tech isn't cold, it's connection if we let it be. Just like family. Thanks, Grandma. Now go kick butt in your next project. And Natalie. Yeah. Never dim your screen just because others refuse to update their systems. So if you've ever been told you're too much, too weird, too technical, too quiet, don't shrink. You're not a glitch. You're the upgrade. And sometimes, you'll need to build your own firewall to protect what matters. Not to keep people out, but to keep yourself intact. If this story struck a chord with you, drop a comment below. Share your story. Let's build a new kind of support system. One where updates are welcome and connection doesn't come at the cost of identity. And Grandma May, if you're watching this on your TV right now while sipping peppermint tea, you're the real MVP. Here's to family. The kind we're born into and the kind we choose. And to truth tellers everywhere. Keep casting your light.